Hi, I'm Rachel Barton Pine. Welcome to Family Fridays with RBP. Today I'm going to play 3 pieces that all have rapid swirls of notes. They're very captivating and probably the most quantity of notes I've played in one of these programs. The first is going to be by my longtime friend, Mark O'Connor. If you're a fan of Mark O'Connor, you're very well aware that he's written 6 caprices, and I had the great honor of working with him on those caprices in the late 90s, helping prepare them for publication and performing them at his fiddle camps where I was on the faculty. And just a few months ago, he came out with Caprice number 7. Now, originally this was going to be a solo caprice, but then he was touring at the time with his string trio for violin, viola, and cello, the Appalachia Waltz Trio, and decided to make the caprice for trio. So he called it Caprice for 3 and actually recorded it under that title. But now he's put it back to his original vision, and a few months ago I actually got to give the world premiere of it on his show. He has a weekly Monday show called Mondays with Mark and Maggie, and it was a great honor to be a guest artist for the very first episode of that program, which is still going strong. My daughter and I enjoy watching it every Monday night while we eat dinner. It's kind of become our tradition here at home. So this is the very second performance of the solo version of this caprice, Caprice number 7 by Mark O'Connor. Oh no. Okay, that was the 3rd page. Let me try that again. Mark O'Connor's Caprice No. 7. And yes, I did play that memorized. It's so much more fun to play certain pieces when you're not looking at the page, and that's definitely one of them. Okay, so for this next 11 and a half page extravaganza, I will be peeking at the music from time to time. This is by my dear friend Joe Deninzon. You've got to check out his stuff. He has a prog rock band for which he sings and plays 7-string electric violin. It's called Stratospherious. But if you just Google Joe Deninzon, you'll find out all his stuff. He does all kinds of cool activities. He's on the faculty of the Mark Wood Rock Orchestra Camp. And the thing I love hearing about most is that every summer he goes off to the Grand Canyon area and helps coach a lot of aspiring young composers who are Native American and helps them get their pieces concert ready and then performs them. So that's just, I think, really super cool. I'm going to read to you his program note because that was too much to memorize for sure, but I think it'll really enhance your listening experience to hear his inspiration. He says, "The blues is like a giant tree that sprouted many branches, including R&B, soul, jazz, country, hip-hop, and most Western musical developments of the past century. The title of this piece is The Electric Lake of Soul." So the title is inspired by a quote from Fierce Invalids Home from Hot Climates, a book from one of my favorite authors, Tom Robbins. They sat for nearly 2 hours, in the course of which Switters lost himself so that his essence passed into what some are wont to call, perhaps unrealistically, the real reality. That realm of consciousness beyond ego and ambition, where mind becomes a silver minnow in a great electric lake of soul. I'm not quite sure what that means, but it sure does sound inspiring. And actually, Joe, if you're watching on Facebook, maybe you can put that in the chat and maybe link to the book. He says, "The opening and closing sequence of the piece is like a meditation. Somewhere in its metamorphosis, the blues got plugged in and went electric, but the soul remained. When it's good, it takes you to that realm of consciousness that Tom Robbins was talking about." Well, I think this piece definitely is good, and hopefully my performance of it will be good too, and you guys will be taken to another plane. Here is The Electric Lake of Soul by Joe Deninzon. The Electric Lake of Soul by Joe Deninzon. Thank you so much for writing that for me, Joe. And actually, happy birthday! It was Joe's birthday yesterday. And it was total coincidence that I'm playing this piece this week. To be honest, I often look up dead composers' birthdays, but I always forget to do so for living composers. I should be better about that. But thankfully, it worked out that way anyway. And I look forward to performing this piece many more times in the years to come. Well, to finish off, I'm going to go back a couple of centuries to the 1740s, I believe. Yes, I think it's the 1740s. Pietro Locatelli was the greatest violinist in Italy prior to Paganini, and really was the shoulders on which Paganini stood. He took things farther than anyone had before, technically and just imaginatively, and then Paganini took it one step further than that. But he was, starting with Locatelli had come up with as a jumping off point for sure. Locatelli wrote a set of 12 violin concertos that he rather pretentiously titled The Art of the Violin, but he was justified in doing so because, like I said, he was doing things that nobody before him had ever done. So, this was the art of the violin's art as it had been taken up to that point. And he wrote out a fully written cadenza for each of his third and first movements of the concertos. So not the slow middle movement, but the outer movements each had a cadenza. And he called each cadenza Caprice, which really just means kind of like a fantasy piece. And so let's think about it. 12 concertos times 2 caprices per concerto. These were the original 24 caprices, and indeed, he actually calls them Caprice number 1, Caprice number 2, and so on. So the first movement cadenza of concerto number 12 is Caprice number 23. Then, of course, the last movement is the original Caprice number 24. I'm going to play the Caprice from the first movement of Concerto number 12. The concerto itself is subtitled The Harmonic Labyrinth, and there's this wonderful little Latin quote about, once you go in, you might never come back out. Sounds a little bit like Hotel California, and it's inspired by this cadenza for the first movement. I often play this in Baroque programs, either on my Baroque violin with Baroque orchestras or on my usual Del Jesu, like I was supposed to do for the 5-city tour in June with the Tel Aviv soloists, 5 different cities in Israel. I'm looking forward to rescheduling that. But this piece also is often played as a standalone, and even used to be so in the recent old days. Like there's a wonderful video of Oistrakh performing it. So it's the one bit of Locatelli's whole set that kind of made it into modern times before we started reviving Baroque stuff. Here is the Harmonic Labyrinth, Caprice number 23 from Concerto number 12 by Pietro Locatelli. The Harmonic Labyrinth, the solo caprice from the first movement of Locatelli's Concerto number 12, also called the Harmonic Labyrinth. And you can just imagine how incredibly cool the entire concerto is just from that excerpt. All right, well, next week I'm going to be playing 3 pieces based on different kinds of American fiddling styles. You just heard Mark O'Connor's most recent caprice. Next time I'm going to be playing his very first experiment in the genre, and personally one of my all-time favorites, Mark O'Connor's Caprice number 1. And I'll be playing a piece written for me by Mohammed Fayrouz, which is inspired by the dance music type of Arabic fiddling. And just in time for Hanukkah, I'll be playing another piece written for me by my friend Yael Strom, which is combining klezmer fiddling with classical. See you there.